Hi everyone, glad to see you back. We're going to start off with a warm-up question from analytic geometry. And we've done questions like this before, but we haven't done them for a while, so I want to take the opportunity to have you work through this problem and just to refresh your memory. So pause the video here. You'll see the question, you've got the graph, and you've got the question down here. So just pause the video and try to work this out, okay? So one thing you may have realized is that there is only one point that you can easily read on the line, and that's this point here, which is 0, 1. There is actually one other point that's reasonably good, and that's this one here, which is but it's kind of an unfortunate point in that it's halfway between, halfway between 3 and 4, so this is 3.5, 4. So those are the points that you're going to need in order to figure out the slope of that line there. Okay, well we can do that. Right, we can start off with our t-chart. We have 0, 1, 0, 1, and 3.5 and 4. And so if we do that, we find our change in x is 0.5 and our change in y is 3. And so our slope is therefore our slope is 3 divided by 3.5. Or another way of writing that you might find easier to work with is 6 divided by 7, which is the same thing. Okay, so now we have our slope. But we're asked for the line perpendicular to that one. So what slope do we need? Well, we need the perpendicular slope, which, as you recall, comes from taking the negative reciprocal. So our slope is going to be negative 7 divided by 6. Our perpendicular slope is negative 7 divided by 6. Okay. And our line has to pass through this point 5, 2, which I've shown on the graph over here. Okay, so we need to use this slope, negative 7 divided by 6, and it needs to pass through this point. So we now have enough information to put those into y equals mx plus b, where we know the y and x come from our point, so y is 2. Our slope is the perpendicular slope, negative 7 divided by 6. Our x is 5, and our b, we don't know yet. Okay, we're going to work this through. So we have, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit here. Give myself a little bit more room. There we go. So we have, whoops, y equals mx plus b. And so we have, what was it? 2 equals negative 7 over 6 times 5 plus b. And then we have 2 equals negative 35 divided by 6 plus b. We need to add that number. We need to add negative 35. We need to add negative 35 over 6 to both sides. So our last line will be 2 plus 35 divided by 6 equals b. And if you do that in your calculator, you'll get b equals 47 divided by 6. Okay, so that's the b value, and we can now just finish our thing off and say y equals, so therefore y equals negative 7 over 6x plus 47 over 6. Now, unfortunately, I can't graph that because the intercept 47/6 is off my scale. I suppose I could start at the point that I was given. I could start at this point and work backwards using the slope. You know, go up 7 and left 6. That would be okay. I would have a few more points that way. But in this case, this is it. This is all I want, my equation. Okay, so I hope that warm-up was okay for you. I know that it can be challenging after a time away, but we're going to be using a lot of analytic geometry in this unit, so we need to review that, and that's the first thing. Okay, so today's lesson is going to be a short one, and it's going to be on special line segments in a triangle, specifically today the median. Okay, so here's a triangle ABC, and I have drawn M here, which as you can see is the midpoint of AB. So here's line segment AB, or side AB, same difference. And M is the midpoint of AB. And I've shown that using these little tick marks to show that this line segment is the same as this line segment. Okay, so I've got the midpoint there. And so that's the midpoint. And then what I've done is I've drawn this red line here. That red line connects point C with point M. And that red line is called the median. Median through C. Okay? It's called the median through C because you see in a triangle you actually have three medians. I could have drawn the median through B. This isn't going to be a very good one, but I could have drawn the median through B, which would look something like that. Or I could have drawn the median through A, which would have looked something like that. But in this case, I want to focus on the median through C because it's a little easier to visualize. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about medians through a point of the triangle, through one of the vertices of the triangle. And that median, if it says through C, for example, the median starts at point C and it goes down until it passes through the midpoint of the opposite side, side AB in this case. So one thing to make it easier to find the median is to slap down a coordinate system. That was missing from my earlier sketch. So here I've slapped down a coordinate system so we can read off our points a little more easily. And here you can see the prompt is to find the median through B, where I have A, B, and C as shown. Okay? So in other words, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to write out a plan, because I want to have a plan as I attack this problem. These problems are complicated enough that a plan can be useful. So here's my plan. It's going to have 3 steps. Step 1, I'm going to find the midpoint of AC. Right? Because if it's a median through B, then it has to also go through the midpoint of AC, which is here somewhere. So I've got to find that. The second thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find the slope between B and that midpoint. Okay, so I need to find the slope between B. Whoopsie. I need to find the slope between B and MAC. Because after all, my line is going to do something like that. So I need to figure out the slope using 2 points that are on that line. And those 2 points are B and the slope, and the midpoint of AC. So that's why I'm going to do that. And then lastly, I'm going to put that into y equals mx plus b. Okay, so that's my plan. 1, 2, 3, not so bad. Let me zoom out a bit here. Let's give myself a little bit more room. Okay, that should be enough. So step 1 of the plan, I need to find the midpoint of AC. So if you remember from the midpoint formula, we need to take the coordinates of A and C and find their average. So for A, the x coordinate is 0, and for C, the x coordinate is 7, We take their average just like that. And then we do the same thing with the y coordinates. So 3 and 1, take their average, and done. Just simplify those, so I have 3.5 and 2. And there we go, now I have my midpoint. Step 2, I need to find the slope between B and that point I just found. So do that in a t-chart. It's the easiest way to visualize it. So B is 5, 5, and my midpoint is 3.52. This is a first difference of negative 1.5. This is a first difference of 3. Excuse me, negative 3. Oops. So my slope is going to equal negative 3 divided by negative 1.5, right? Rise over run, y's over x. And that equals 2. So my slope equals 2. So I have my slope. There we go. I have my midpoint. That's good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, actually I'm going to zoom out again. A little bit more room. Okay, so step 3, y equals mx plus b. Now because I'm talking about the line which goes like this, I need to use the slope, 2, and I need to use one of the points that I know on that line. I know the point B is on that line, and I know the midpoint, which is there somewhere, is also on the line. Since the midpoint has this 3.5 in it, which is not super nice, I'm going to choose B instead. B has nice coordinates. So B is at 5, 5. So y is 5, the slope is 2, x is 5, and little b, the y-intercept, I don't know. I'm going to find it out. So if I isolate b, I get 5 subtract 10 equals b. So negative 5 equals b. And so therefore my line is y equals 2x minus 5. And that's it. That's my median. If I had a little bit more space on my graph, it might be nice to graph the median. For instance, I can put in the point, 3.52, so there's my midpoint. But since the y-intercept is so far down, negative 5, I'm not going to get a really accurate line here, but roughly speaking, that's my median. Roughly. Okay. If you had more graph paper and you had set up your graph a little better, then we could have graphed that, but anyway. Moving on. So here's another kind of question where I'm not even given a graph. So really, if you had graph paper available, it might be worthwhile to graph so you have a picture because it's a little easier to understand. But really, we don't even need to, because once you sort of get the idea of these medians, you don't really even need to do the graph any longer. You just sort of work through your plan. So reading through this, I'm asked to find the median through A, and these are the 3 points of my triangle. Okay, so once again, I'm going to write a plan. I'm going to write a plan, and it'll go something like this. Step 1, find the midpoint of BC. Step 2, find the slope between, sorry, I'm going to use the word slope between A and that midpoint. And then step 3, put those into y equals mx plus b. Alright, same plan as before. And that's the thing, once you start doing a few of these median questions, you'll see they're all the same. So I'm going to zoom out a bit just to give myself a little more room. I don't think I'll need too much. Okay, so the first thing, step 1, find the midpoint of BC. So the midpoint is 0. Oops. 0 plus 6 divided by 2, and 4 plus 0 divided by 2. Okay, so we're taking the average. And we work that out. So the midpoint is 3, 2. Done. And step 2, we want to find our slope. So again, t-chart. We can, so we're going to use A, which is negative 10, 2, and our midpoint, which is 3, 2. And so here, my change in x is positive 13, and my change in y is 0. Uh-oh. So that means that my slope, right, it's the change in y divided by the change in x. 0 divided by 13 is just 0. So my slope is 0. Oh, jeepers. This is where, if you had a graph, you could, things might make a little more sense. You got to remember in your mind, what does it mean to have a slope that's 0? What kind of line is that? Well, have a think about it, because we're almost done. So step 3, we then just go ahead and put this into y equals mx plus b. I'm going to zoom out again, just to give myself a little more room. There we go. Okay, so again, I have to choose a point. One of the points on the line, my choices are, I can use the point A, or I can use the point M, the midpoint. Doesn't matter, but I'm going to use the midpoint just because why not? So my y will be 2, my slope will be 0, my x will be 3, and my b will be unknown. I got to solve for it. So now, just simplifying the right-hand side, 0 times 3 is 0, so I have 2 equals b. Oh, well, shucks. That means that my median is just y equals 2. That's it. Done. Okay, so that's basically it. Whenever you're doing these kinds of median questions, it's really helpful if you write out a plan, because that will help you, be a little more organized and follow through. If you should ever, I don't know, write down a plan, but maybe you don't execute it super well, then I can at least see that you have some understanding of the process, because I can look at your plan. So even if you made like an arithmetic error in here somewhere, then it's not the end of the world. Okay, anyway, that's enough for today. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in class.